Hi, this is attorney Jamie Miller, and today on the Miller Law Chronicles podcast, we're going to talk about when it's the right time to file bankruptcy. It's going to be me and my new co-host, Brandi Spaich. You'll get to know her a little bit, and we're also going to just talk in general about the things that may come up with you that help you understand that now's the time to file bankruptcy, or now's the time to consider filing for bankruptcy. I know that you like our podcast, and we're really grateful that you're spending the time to listen to us. If you like these podcasts and you're really interested in seeing them continue, really would appreciate it if you subscribe to us at our YouTube page of Miller Law Chronicles, and also that you like us at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Like us or subscribe to us. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Hi, this is attorney Jamie Miller, and I'm really excited to welcome you to another edition of the Miller Law Chronicles podcast. And today we are going to talk at length about how do you know if filing bankruptcy is the right thing for you. And today we're going to mix it up a little bit. I'm really excited that for the first time in the podcast that we've done, I think this is podcast number 40 or something in that area, but I'm excited to bring on as my new co-host, Brandi Spaich. Brandi, thank you so much for joining me. And I'm so excited to have a partner here. I've been talking to myself for a couple of years now doing the podcasts, and having a talent like you join me as a co-host is going to be a welcome addition to the Miller Law Chronicles podcast. So hi, and welcome aboard.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm super excited to start doing this with you too. I know it's definitely difficult to talk by yourself just at a camera.
I love communicating, but having that interaction and having someone like you play the position of the audience and being able to think what they're thinking and ask additional questions is going to add so much value to what I'm doing. So thank you much. And what I really like to do to kick this off, since this is your first podcast joining us, tell me a little bit about Brandi Spaich, where you're living, what you do, and how'd you arrive at this situation of being a co-host of my podcast?
Oh, yes. I have spent my entire life born and raised in Southwest Florida, in the Lee County area. Education specifically was pretty unique. I was homeschooled all the way up until high school. And then I went to a school down here. It's called Florida Southwestern Collegiate High School. And what they did is the first 2 years was just a normal high school experience in their on-campus high school. And then my senior year was full-time college. So I was able to graduate with my associate's degree as soon as I graduated high school, which was really nice because I was already 2 years ahead in school. So I was able to have my associate's degree at 16 years old. Definitely made it a lot easier to kickstart my life there.
I noticed from reading your biography that one of your greatest passions is drawing and painting. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I've drawn and done art since I can remember. I'm fully self-taught. I haven't taken any kind of art classes. My favorite things to draw is kind of cartoons, and I like to make up my own comics, things along those lines. But I also really like painting landscapes. They're just very calming to paint.
Do you paint on like paper, or are you an electronic, like you paint on the iPad? How's that work for you?
So for a lot of my landscapes, I typically do my paintings on canvas with either acrylic or oil paint, depending on how long I want to have to wait for my paint to dry. But a lot of the cartoons and comics I do digitally on my iPad.
There's a new screensaver out there that you can put on your iPad that makes it feel like paper. Do you use that?
I have not yet because my friend draws a lot as well. She got one of those, and it's really nice when you have your pencil, but if you ever want to do anything like just using your finger on it to swipe through or find a reference, it feels very strange.
Right.
Just kind of like you're dragging your finger on a piece of paper.
Yes, that's interesting. And then I've had many guests on my podcast over the years, but I've never had a guest that's had experience showing pigs.
Yes.
Tell me, I got to hear about that.
Careful, the rest of the podcast might be about pigs. So I was in a organization called 4-H throughout my school years, essentially. It was an extracurricular. And I did a lot in the agriculture side of that. So for the pig side, I'd get a pig around October and it would be younger. And I'd raise it up and try to essentially get it as big as possible and work on it to use a stick to just annoy it to want to go wherever I needed it to go. And then I'd go and show it at our county fair that we have, and then we'd go and we'd sell them at auction. So I did that for years.
Do you have any funny mishaps or a funny story about something that happened when you were showing a pig once?
When I was in the show ring, luckily nothing went too awry.
Right.
But when I was taking care of it at my house, there was multiple times. Pigs don't have very good senses of personal space. So I had one pig that had gotten really big, and I'm quite small myself, and it decided to run between my legs, and it took me on a ride. It swooped me up and just kept running.
Wow. And do pigs develop like relationships with people like a dog would? Tell me about it. I'm just interested. Not that we're on topic at all. Hearing
Yeah,
about.
honestly, so pigs are a lot smarter and just intelligence-wise and emotionally than a lot of people give them credit for. They're actually pretty similar to dogs, if not actually a little bit more intelligent. I've had pigs that had favorite songs, or one pig, which I loved her. She was awesome, and she liked me too, but at night I have to put them up in the pen so that nothing happens. She ended up finding out that I did not want to chase after her if she went into the pond. So every time it would start to get to nighttime where I'd have to go put her up, she would go and swim out to the middle of our pond and stay there. So I would have to go trudging through the pond to
Oh no.
get her.
And bring
So
her
they
back.
learn quick.
That's awesome. I have a lot more great information. I understand that you're a police dispatcher also,
Hmm.
amongst all the things that you're doing in life. I want to hold that and talk about your police dispatching perhaps in our next podcast. But I really want to get to the conversation about how someone knows when it's the right
Right.
time to file for bankruptcy. And
Hmm.
we file a lot of bankruptcies for people here at Miller Law. And I get that question quite a bit.
Hmm.
Clients come in and they want to know, is this the right time? Should I do it now? Should I do it at some point in the future? And so I'm really just interested in chatting with you about that a little bit and hoping to give our clients some insight in how to answer that question.
I think a really good first question on that is, what exactly is the definition of bankruptcy? Because I feel like just from people I've talked to that are at least my age, it's a foggy topic. Our closest experience with bankruptcy is going bankrupt in Monopoly.
Yeah. And it's amazing. You're young, and I'm having
Mhm.
this conversation with a lot of younger people that are graduating school or graduating college or some sort of vocational school, and they have student loans. So it's not abnormal for me to have a conversation with a younger person. But bankruptcy, there's two main types of bankruptcy that we're talking about. One
Mhm.
is a Chapter 7, where someone can discharge their debts, wipe them out, get a
Mhm.
fresh start. Generally, when someone files bankruptcy, they're not losing their assets, they're not losing their home, they're not losing their car. It's a great way to get rid of debts and rebuild their credit. We have a program that will help people get back up to a 720 credit score. So
Oh.
basically, getting rid of their debt, rebuilding their credit, and moving forward. The other
Mhm.
type of bankruptcy is a Chapter 13, which is a repayment plan. We do a Chapter 13 in a situation where a client may have too much income to qualify for a Chapter 7, so they don't fit within the guidelines that file a Chapter 7, or they may have assets that aren't exempt. So if we would file a Chapter 7, they could lose a car or lose a home, which is really odd for that
Right.
to happen. But there's different reasons why we would do a 7 or do a Chapter 13.
Mhm.
Bottom line, it stops creditors from calling, gives people a fresh start, and allows them to get back on their feet.
Yeah, that's really awesome that stuff like that is set up for people too. And I feel like it's definitely important to, like we just did, go over what bankruptcy is, because so many people think that's more of an end of the line than a fresh start situation. Almost that
And
there's a bit of stigma with it.
exactly. And the important thing is when someone comes in and consults with me about filing a bankruptcy, their first option is to do nothing, right? So
Mhm.
I'm going to explain to them what their options are. This is what's going to happen if you continue doing what you're doing. Or
Right.
we can look at debt negotiation. We can look at bankruptcy. We can look
Mhm.
at all the different options. And I don't view my role in the process as telling people what to do. 50% of the people that come in to meet with me choose not to file for bankruptcy. They choose to go
Mhm.
a different path, which is great. And I don't like to paint a picture, hey, bankruptcy is fantastic. Everybody should do it.
Right.
We don't act that way. My job is to educate my clients, help
Mhm.
them understand their options, and help shepherd them to the option that works for them and their family. And that's important because it's not like I'm trying to sell them a used car or something like that. I want to get them in and help them learn perhaps what could be the next best step for them.
Yeah, I think that's very important too. What would be maybe some signs that would mean it's time to start considering that as an option to declare bankruptcy?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I get that all the time. And
Mhm.
I think the first sign that people have is when they start falling behind on their debts and they don't have an ability to pay their bills, or
Mhm.
they're using their credit cards to rob Peter to pay Paul. It becomes
Right.
this cycle that, and I see people, Brandy, quite a bit that come in and they're up to date on their
Mhm.
bills. And their credit score is not terrible, but they're not saving for retirement. They're not saving for the future. They're living paycheck to paycheck. And
Mhm.
you see it in different reports on the economy that people don't have an extra $500 available to them should they have some sort of emergency. And we see that a lot. I think if someone is receiving constant calls from creditors and can't take that stress
Mhm.
anymore, have you had friends, family members that have been in this situation? I'm curious, maybe they even had filed bankruptcy, but what do you see them dealing with?
I know one of my friends that is actually my age struggling with that very much so, like you just said, that kind of paycheck to paycheck situation. And it's not like she's not trying, but I don't know how it is where you are, but it's very difficult to get a decent job down here. She's got one, she's looking at another one because we have a lot of issues of seasonal things
Right.
to where hours start getting cut, even though it's not even marked as a seasonal job.
And what's interesting is even if people have good jobs today
Hmm.
and are making a decent wage, every time I go to the grocery store or I go to CVS or Walgreens, I'm blown away how much a tube of toothpaste costs. I
Yeah.
mean, everything has just skyrocketed, that the amount of money that we have as disposable income, and people who were able to pay their monthly credit card bills 2 years ago, even though maybe their income's gone up a little bit, but with inflation, paying that credit card can become more of a challenge.
I know even with me personally, I'm not paycheck to paycheck per se, but I have both, like we mentioned earlier, the police batching job and then my job with the push button podcasting. And even with those two together, I'm not even 100% sure I could move out and live completely on my own right now if I wanted to.
Yeah,
So,
and one of the other important things, and I just did a podcast a few weeks ago where I interviewed a clinical psychologist by the name of
mhm,
Stacy Knight, who's a psychologist in our community, talking about the negative effects and the mental and physical stress that
mhm,
having debts has. That it's the end of the month, you've paid all of your bills, all of a sudden the first of the month comes along and those bills start coming in,
mhm,
and a lot of people have kids and you have to prioritize. It's not even a situation for people where I can't go on vacation this year. I can't buy my new car. I can't afford school lunch for my
you know,
kid, or I can't sign my kid up for soccer or any of those things because everything is so expensive. And again, it's not the end all be all, but it is something that is positively impacting people and in helping getting rid of debt and helping them to move forward.
I can only imagine the level of stress that a lot of those people go through, probably enough to the point that it starts impacting their actual physical health. which would turn around and bite them. If you're physically unhealthy, it's hard to do stuff to make more money.
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of clients that have been impacted by mental illness over last year, over the many years that I've been doing this, that the debts and the pressure from the debts. And I can't tell you the amount of times that I've represented a spouse who is in charge of all their finances and they haven't been honest with the other spouse. And
No.
hiding that secret has been so burdensome. And
Mhm.
then the other spouse finds out. And once they confront this issue together, how we're able to get that resolved. The other thing is if you're dealing with a foreclosure or a repossession or you don't see any foreseeable improvement, a lot of
Yeah.
people, I like my job. I love the people that I work with. I'm making $22 an hour,
Mhm.
$25 an hour, or 50,000 a year. My upside isn't going to be much greater than that. I can accept that, but I
Mhm.
need to make sure that my monthly expenses are in line with my income. Lack of savings is an issue. When people know when they know, but there's many
Mhm.
different factors. And the other important thing
Right.
is, again, if you have a problem, get help, seek a professional. If you have a tax
Absolutely.
problem, talk to an accountant. If you have a mental health problem, talk to a psychologist. If you have a debt problem, talk to a lawyer, talk to a bankruptcy lawyer. The saying that I always go back to, and one of my mentors always says, is that action kills fear. And so you
Mhm.
have the fear of dealing with these debts, do something about it.
Yeah. How would you suggest people start assessing all of those pieces and coming to that conclusion that it's time to consider that? It's got to be a lot to look through.
It is. And there's a lot of information that's available out there. You can be a Google warrior and
Mhm.
get all the information. There's so much misinformation on the internet. I would probably say 70% of the people that I talk to come in thinking that if I file bankruptcy, I'm going to lose my car, I'm going to lose my house. There's a lot of rumors out on the street where you talk to your friend and they had a terrible experience or
Right.
they lost a car. Their experience is not your experience. And everybody's situation is different. And so if you need to file a bankruptcy, you need to talk to a bankruptcy lawyer, someone that
Right.
specializes in the area, has all the nuances, and can talk specifically about your situation
Mhm.
and what all of your options are. And anyone that comes to our office, they leave here with bankruptcy options, non-bankruptcy options, and are really afforded the opportunity to do what works best for them.
What would be some of those alternatives that you were talking about that would be non-bankruptcy options?
Yeah, so we're seeing more and more senior citizens that are coming to us that are retired, that may be living in a senior community, that are on Social Security or another fixed income. Say they come in with $20,000 in credit card debt or $10,000 in credit card debt, and they just can't do it anymore. So
Mhm.
for those people, we'll analyze their situation and determine whether they even need to file bankruptcy.
Mhm.
Or we'll talk to someone who doesn't own any real estate, who doesn't have any car payments, who may be under an income level that's not garnishable. So one of the options that we always look at, and I want anyone to exit a meeting with me understanding what doing nothing looks like,
Mhm.
right? So if you do nothing, you don't need to worry about being garnished. You don't need to worry about judgments. You don't need to worry about losing real estate. And this is what the impact is on your credit report if you do nothing.
Right.
The, the other option is debt negotiation. If you
Mhm.
have $10,000 in credit card or $20,000 in credit card debt, you could file bankruptcy and wipe out all of that debt. We can look at maybe you want to avoid bankruptcy because you just don't feel comfortable with it or you don't qualify for, let's say, a Chapter 7. We're
Mhm.
going to talk about your debt negotiation options and what it looks like to try to resolve a debt with a creditor outside of a bankruptcy. I just had a client today that I spoke with that has a $6,700 medical bill. And
Wow.
$6,700 is a lot. And the hospital is asking that they pay $450 a month. And they're on a fixed income and they just can't afford the $450 a month. So what we recommended to them, instead of doing a bankruptcy, we suggested they do what's called a Chapter 128. Now,
Hmm.
a Chapter 128 is specific law in Wisconsin that allows people to pay back their debts in full over 36 months.
Hmm.
So a Chapter 128 in this person's case, so the hospital is telling them, we're going to garnish your wages if you don't pay us $450 a month. The
Right.
Chapter 128 allows us to pay back $250 a month, which is affordable for this client. And they can't garnish, they can't call, they can't do anything. So Chapter 128 is a non-bankruptcy option that allows clients to set up a payment plan. And then we'll talk
Okay.
about the bankruptcy option. So it's debt negotiation, Chapter 128, bankruptcy.
Yeah, and it seems like there's a lot more options there than a lot of people realize, because I'm sure I didn't realize that debt negotiation was even a thing that you could do. Obviously, I'm sure it's a state by state situation, but still, a lot of those options we don't even know about.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're ever up late at night and you see these debt negotiation companies, the 1-800 numbers advertising on
Hmm.
television, and you got to be wary because they often overpromise and underdeliver, and you're sending your money off into the stratosphere. One of the benefits of hiring a local company to do debt negotiation is that you can come in, you can see our face, we're accountable, we're subject to the laws of the state of Wisconsin. So if you are going to go to the route of debt negotiation, I don't think I've seen a client go through one of those 1-800 debt negotiation programs and really find success with it.
Yeah, there does seem like something that there would be a lot of, I guess not by definition scams, but definitely some overpromising that would be happening for people in more vulnerable times like that.
Exactly.
If someone did decide to go through with bankruptcy, what would the process of starting that look like?
Yeah, so the first step is to retain our office, and
Mhm.
our team is trained to figure out a way to make it work for our clients. And I get the question, Brandy, all the time, especially like from my friends. They see that I'm a bankruptcy lawyer. And so, how do bankruptcy clients afford to pay you? I think that's a fair question. Our clients that need to file a bankruptcy because they have assets to protect, they have
Mhm.
income to protect. So imagine someone has $20,000 in credit card debt and they come in and we're chatting with them. We decide to do a bankruptcy. We'll tell them in that meeting, hey, listen, stop paying that credit card debt. You're
Mhm.
paying $250 a month to pay that credit card debt. We're going to send certified letters to your creditors, tell them you have a lawyer. We need X amount down. The 250 a month or the 100 a month or 200 a month you might have can go towards paying the legal fees. The creditors will stay off your back and we'll get your case filed. One of our
Right.
core values that we operate under is finding a way. We don't like to turn anyone away. Our clients are very valuable and important to us, and we will figure out a way to overcome the affordability issue of filing for bankruptcy. So get the fee paid, and then they contact us, and we work with them to gather all the information that we need to get their case filed. We have something called an onboarding coordinator. The
Mhm.
onboarding coordinator's goal is to make sure that we make the process of gathering all the information that we need as easy as possible. So we get
Right.
all the documents, and then we prepare the bankruptcy petition,
Mhm.
and then the client meets with one of my lawyers or myself, and we go through the paperwork word for word to make sure all the information is correct.
Mhm.
Most importantly, to make sure all the debts are listed. We file the case. Once we file the case, we get an injunction that prevents the creditors from bothering the client legally. And then we
Right.
go to court to get it approved. Process takes about 90 days, but it's really the date that we file it that's the important date.
Yeah. Honestly, 90 days, it might sound long to some people, but for such would be a complex process, it seems pretty speedy.
Yeah, it is a complex process in that the information that we need to get a case filed and
Mhm.
approved is complicated as far as the disclosure perspective. And we do a lot of this work. This is what we specialize in. And the process that we work with our clients is geared towards getting all the information that we need so we can get a case filed as expeditiously as possible.
Yeah. And what would it look like after someone got through filing all of that stuff? How does one go about rebuilding their life after bankruptcy?
Yeah, and another great question. Thank you.
Of
That's
course.
something that's very common that our clients are asking all the time.
Mhm.
What does the future look like? And
Right.
the future starts with the moment a client hires us. Because what we do is we pull our client's credit report, we pull
Mhm.
a kind of a summary tri-bureau report that gives us all the creditor information. And we use the creditor debts off of the credit report to populate the bankruptcy petition with the client's debts.
Mhm.
And then once the case is done, we go back to that credit report to make sure any of the information that was listed on the credit report reflects that those debts have been discharged in bankruptcy. So
Right.
if someone has, again, a $20,000 Citibank card, after the bankruptcy is over, we're going to circle back to the credit report to make sure that the credit report reflects that there's no balance, right?
Right.
So when you go to apply for credit in the future, if you don't do this step, your credit's never going to improve. So you may have listed Citibank on your bankruptcy, and Citibank's never going to collect from you. But 2 years after you file for bankruptcy, if you go to apply for a car loan and that amount on your credit report has never been properly reflected on the report as being discharged in bankruptcy, you're not
Mhm.
going to see the improvement of your credit score that's going to allow you to get that car. So
Right.
after the bankruptcy is done, we go back and review the credit report to make sure we update it for what the current situation is.
Mhm.
Because we want to get, when you look at a credit report, if someone has a ton of debt, their debt to income ratio is really high. That's one of the
Mhm.
key factors with credit. So if we lower the debt to income ratio by making sure those debts reflect that they're gone, that's going to result in improving credit score.
Makes sense. I think a lot of people too, especially I'm 19. I don't know a whole lot about all the bankruptcy financial stuff personally. I thought that something like declaring bankruptcy would actually really hit hard on your credit score.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
for that person that's up to date on all their bills and has a 750 credit score and they file bankruptcy, their credit score is probably going to drop like
Mhm.
100 points after we file
Right.
bankruptcy. But most of the people that we see, they're already behind on their bills. Their credit score is not great. So if someone
Mhm.
comes in with a 680 or 650 credit score, the filing of the bankruptcy is not going to do anything negative to their credit. In fact,
Mhm.
it's going to help their credit because their debt to income ratio is going to go up. So, in addition to helping people improve their credit by cleaning up their credit report, we're also going to enroll them in a program called 7 Steps to 720, which is a credit restoration program that's going to help people give them the tools to work on their credit to get their credit back to the way
Right.
they want.
And that sounds like one of the resources you'd give someone post bankruptcy. Are there any other places that people can look at to get that support after they go through that?
Yeah, and I've been doing this a long time, and I've
Mhm.
always wanted to be more than just a firm that files bankruptcies for people. We wanted to be someone that can paint a positive future for our clients, and we've partnered with other organizations. This isn't something that we do ourselves. We have different companies that specialize in this that are our partners that at no additional charge. So
Right.
what we are charging the client for the bankruptcy includes all these other services. But
Mhm.
I've always found value in working and getting to know others in our national community that can
Right.
help clients. And one of our other partners is Ash Auto out of Scottsdale, Arizona.
Mhm.
So we have clients, Brandy, all the time that file bankruptcy and need transportation, but their credit isn't great.
Mhm.
And so we've partnered with Ash Auto, who is able to help someone get a car day one out of bankruptcy and get
Wow.
a decent car and get a
Mhm.
decent interest rate. And that's a great way to help improve credit. So that's one of the many different tools. And you can go. There's other really great bankruptcy lawyers in Wisconsin that people can go to. And I always suggest people shop around and feel
Mhm.
comfortable with what they're doing. And many other firms are going to get the exact same result that we did and get
Right.
them that discharge. But are they going to take the next step with the client and make sure that they have as bright a credit future as they can?
Yeah, and that's awesome that you're able to partner with all of those individuals and organizations to make that as easy of a transition as possible. Do you have any kind of like personal stories of people that you can legally share, of course, that have been able to get through some of that stuff?
Yeah, many. And I can think of one client who lived in Milwaukee, but worked in Sheboygan, which is about 45 minutes from
Hmm.
here. And their car broke down. So they had a beater kind of car
Hmm.
that was just for transportation. And that car broke down. And so they've been having to love their job and they wanted to keep their job. Their credit was terrible and they had a lot of credit card debt, lots of medical bills, utility
Hmm.
bills. And they were actually Ubering to work 3 days a week at 45
Wow.
minutes. It was costing over $1,000 a month in Uber costs,
Hmm.
which they can afford the 1,000 a month for the Uber. But if someone would trust them and lend them the money to get a car for $250 a month, that would solve the problem. But the way our credit world is set up, they didn't have the credit. So we were able to get them filed bankruptcy. We got them through the process right in 90 days. And today I just got an email from Ash Auto that shows the delivery of their 2020 Ford Escape
Oh, wow.
with 45,000 miles on it and a monthly payment of $350 a month from the client who was really excited. They can now drive to work. They have a newer model car that has, I think they got a warranty on it and they have gap insurance and they're feeling confident that they're going to be able to move forward. And we have just a lot of stories like that.
And that's awesome that people are able to actually get that fresh start that sometimes you can really need.
I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you for this first podcast. You were really great in being my co-host, and I'm looking forward to doing more podcasts in the future. And I appreciate it very much, Brandi.
Of course. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.